So here we are at Cheap Joe's, in the Cheap Joe's studio behind the studio, and I have the privilege of being with John Lovett from Brisbane.
South of Brisbane.
South of Brisbane, not Brisbane, which
Not
most
Brisbane.
Americans would say, but when I talked to John's wife yesterday, she said Brisbane, and I said, that's right. So all the way from Australia, and you come over to the United States for 3, 4, 5 weeks
Yeah,
to do workshops.
and look around and just enjoy the place.
Look around and enjoy the place. And like I said, this is the first time that we've had the privilege of having John, who's a big international artist contributor. And the short story is my cousin, who's taking John's class from Michigan, 10 years ago decided to be a painter. And he went to the library, and guess what book he got? He got one of your books. And apparently that book is now out of print and worth about $1,000.
So I've been told.
So,
Yeah.
so we all need to
I
find
should have saved one. Yeah,
Huh?
I should have saved one.
Should have saved one. So we all could we could retire on John Lovett's books. But anyway, you've got a full class of 25, and I've been in the class several times, and there's not an amateur artist in the class, is there?
No, they're all very good
They're all very good, and
and working very hard.
I am, and my cousin's thrilled, and everybody I've talked to is thrilled to be able to meet you firsthand, and they are producing some of the best paintings I've seen all year, and I've seen some good paintings. So, not to say that other instructors have not produced good stuff, but that I think it's exceptional this week, and people are enjoying themselves.
Yeah, it's a great group. They're really enthusiastic, work hard. They want to keep going, which is
Yeah.
really good.
So a lot of them are in by 8:15. The class doesn't start till 9 technically, and they're staying till about 5. So, and the lunches are pretty good too. But one thing you notice when you first see a John Lovett painting, and let's talk about maybe this one first. So I took this down, and it's sold. There are a lot of lines.
Yeah.
What is, it's an interesting technique.
Yeah, when I start a painting, I sort of work it out at a little thumbnail sketch first.
Okay.
So I sort of plan where the focal point will be, plan where the sort of supporting areas will be,
Okay.
and just block in the major shapes, I guess. And particularly a subject like this where there's a lot of detail in it,
Right.
I'll simplify that to 4 or 5 shapes, then start fracturing them with smaller shapes and
Okay.
smaller shapes, and eventually you get all these little details.
Right.
But with the lines, I like to use a variety of lines. So I'll start perhaps with a rigger brush and
Right.
outline windows, put in details, gutter lines, all that sort of thing. Then I'll move to a pen, use pen lines. I like to spray the pen lines. You can see there's a few little soft sort
Right.
of feathery marks there. That's ink that's been sprayed. Then I'll use charcoal pencil. I do the initial drawing with charcoal pencil, and then into over the top of what I've already got there, I'll then draw more charcoal lines. So
Right.
you get that variation in lines. I find if you just use a rigger brush and nothing else, it gets a little bit monotonous. But by mixing
Right.
it up with other things, it becomes much more interesting.
So there's a lot of watercolor that I've been used to seeing where they kind of just allow the color to float in, and they might do a rough pencil sketch, but then all the lines go away. That's
Yeah.
a kind of a traditional approach, whereas with your landscapes, you tend to not be
Yeah,
as...
they're not so linear. I mean, architectural subjects, because they're so geometric and formal
Right.
sort of shapes, they suit that linear sort of approach.
Right.
These
Now you've got some lines.
Still use a lot of lines,
Yeah,
and always variety of lines. So, I've got soft, thick lines here, then very fine ones, lines, sort of these lines in the fences, and stuff,
Right.
very pale, almost not visible,
Right.
but just enough so you can see
They're
it.
still adding a detail that
Yeah,
your eye will catch, yeah.
and variety, you know,
Right.
it's that variation that I really...
And the one thing we can say too is that you're using a limited palette, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I only use half a dozen colours.
Right. So, and
But,
you're,
but with those colours, I can pretty well mix anything. It's,
Right.
You know, I use quinacridone gold as the yellow. Being a transparent yellow means
Right.
you don't get muddy mixtures with it. So I find that suits me for pretty well any yellow I need. I'll use alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and phthalo blue, and just with those, you know, I can
right, you can do a lot. I mean, there is a visual difference between this and that. And then we have another architectural piece where you've lightened it up and
yeah,
very definitive.
yeah, very sharp details.
Right.
But there's a lot of sort of softness in it as well. So
Right.
this area, I obliterated it with gesso. So I worked the gesso right over that, completely covered it, then with a wet brush, softened the edge of the gesso and worked back into it, and then
Right.
using a soft goat hair brush, just pull that out until you're left with a sort of
Right.
haze of gesso. When that dries, I can work back into it, put paint back into it, ink lines, charcoal, anything. But you get that nice sort of
Right.
subtle variation between this softness and this clarity you get in the focal area. And I love that
Right.
playoff between, you know, sharp focused detail
Right.
and then soft.
And it's still watercolor because when you say softness, I say kind of atmospheric. So there's
Yeah.
kind of that feeling that it's there's no fog, but it's kind of you
Yeah,
know, it's suggesting that there's something there,
That's right.
and it's making you
like your
work a
eyes.
little harder, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like what your
Yeah.
vision does. You know, when you
Right.
look at something, you don't take in all the peripheral stuff.
Right, right.
You focus on
Right.
something, your eyes will move to something else, but there's a whole plethora of things around that are sort of lost. You know,
Right.
the detail's not noticed. It's there, but it's not sharp and focused. And I
Right.
like to try and get that into the paintings, that feeling of focusing on something while the rest of it's visible, but it's suggested. And I kind of like the interest that you get when you come up and you look at a painting, you look at that sharp focus
Right.
area, but your eye will wander out and you'll see things
Right.
over here that are just barely suggested, same over here.
Right.
And because of the evidence you get from that focusing area, this sort of stuff makes sense.
Right.
Without that, this is just marks, splodges, dots, lines.
But it's a very focused composition as well.
Yeah,
I mean, you've spent some time, you've got the area
Yeah.
of interest, your eyes are kind of, you're blocking in what you want people to see
yeah.
with your color.
That's right, and that's the reason behind those thumbnail sketches I
Right.
always do. Just a quick little sketch, I'll do 3 or 4 of them, just to get that arrangement
Right.
worked out.
So when you teach, I noticed on everybody's table is there a thumbnail sketch of something that you want when you're doing a
I get
demo?
the students to, I'll give them a source image, and then they'll take that image and eliminate some things, rearrange some things,
Right.
and I generally try to get an image that is not quite right, that's a little bit
Right.
symmetrical, or things need adjusting to make
Right.
it work properly. So it forces them to think about composition, to think about moving and editing things
Okay.
to make the painting work.
So let's kind of switch away from the art to the teachings. So you're coming from Australia, you've got 25 students who've paid good money to take a John Lovett class. What do you want them to leave with? What are you doing during the week? What do you want them to take home?
Well, I feel like teaching, I paint in a certain way, and people generally come to my classes because they like the way I paint. So
Right.
whatever I can give them to show how I do that's what
Right.
I like to give them. And I don't hold back anything. I explain everything I can, and I encourage them to ask as many questions as they can if there's anything they don't understand. And this group have been great. They're very good questions I'm getting from them. Little things that I take for granted, when I sort of,
Right.
I'll pick up a damp brush and pull a line down, or soften something, soften an edge, and someone will say, why did you do that? And it never really occurred to me, but I do it all the time, but it's
Right.
something that you don't think it's important, but it is important. So it's great when you get that feedback from the students.
So you want them to go home with,
Just with a fresh idea of looking at how they paint, I think.
okay. And often instructors have said that if they get one or two things that they can incorporate, it's been worth the price of admission. And of course, taking a class with other people, they're kind of looking around and they're going, that inspires them to do more, better, or, I mean,
Yeah.
just the class part.
I think I find the first day in a class, people are a little, especially if it's people that don't know one another. The students are a little bit wary or cautious of how they fit into everything, and I can understand it. I mean, I'd hate to sort of be dumped into a class
Right.
of people you don't know. It would be nerve-wracking, but by the second day, everyone settles down, and then they make progress. And I think I always try and get them to relax and not worry about what they produce or where they fit within the pecking order of the class,
Right.
and just to get as much out of it as they can.
So, a question about history. How did you get here and when did it start? I mean, what led up to all of this?
Well, my father's an artist. Ever since I was a little kid, there's been a studio full of paint and brushes, and he was the official artist for the Snowy Mountains scheme in Australia for 15 or 20 years, and I used to go into his studio there. It was amazing. He had everything you could make. It was like your art supply store out there.
Right,
It's just-
right.
There's so much stuff there, and I just grew up with it, and I always loved it. And when I left school, I was lucky enough to be asked to do an exhibition. So at the age of 19, I produced 25 paintings, I think, and went into a gallery, and they sold reasonably well. And that just sort of made me think, well, maybe you can make a living doing this. And that got me on the path of painting. But I will say, early on, I painted in a fairly traditional sort of way. There were rules that you followed for watercolor. I stayed within those rules, but I got to a point where I found it was not satisfying me. You produced competent paintings, but they just became repetitive, I guess. So that's when I started mucking around with other things, with ink and with gesso and gouache and all sorts of things. And you sort of step outside the confines of traditional watercolour, but you have so much more fun, and you can destroy parts of the painting and then bring them back to life. And I just find I like to see the painting sort of grow in front of me, and I think all these different tools you have now, it just makes it so much more enjoyable, and the results so much more exciting.
So if you had a name for this, what would you call, it's obviously representational, and it's obviously watercolor that's soft and blendy and transparent, but I mean, is there a school of thought, or is there anything that you've defined it as, that if I said John Lovett does this, would that be, is there anything accurate that?
I've never really thought about defining it, but I'd say, if anything, it's an intuitive way of painting.
Okay.
I start with that plan, that thumbnail, but I allow the painting to develop. I allow accidents to happen. I encourage accidents to happen, and I sort of push that even. I'll pick up a brush full of dark blue or something, and I'll like this painting, for instance. The wash through the foreground there, I can look right up into the sky on that side, just to knock all that back, scrub it over.
Right.
And I sort of stopped and looked at it and said, yeah, that'll work. And so you soften the edges, make adjustments, and then come back into it. But it's it's a sort of very free way of painting.
So it's like a friend of mine, or everybody knows Robert Brewer, and Robert would say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it? So it seems like your painting is enjoyable to you because everything is just, it could turn out this way, it could turn out that way. You're allowing, like you said, accidents to happen.
Yeah.
You're looking for them almost.
Encouraging them. Yeah.
Encourage them, and then at the end you've got it, and then you start another one. I mean, you've got 50 paintings hanging up in the room over there, and
Well, you learn to cope with pretty near anything that happens.
Okay.
And by pushing the painting like that, and making mistakes happen,
Right.
and then dealing with that mistake to pull it back into line, you
Right.
become good at just manipulating things.
Right.
And I love that.
So you're not hard on yourself.
No.
Oh, this is good and this is not good.
No.
All that stuff that people
Right
do.
at the end, I am hard on myself, but during the path towards that end, I'm very sort of flexible. It's almost like I'm standing by watching someone else do the painting.
Right. Well, it's like my job and your job is to encourage people to be creative, because everybody knows that by being creative, it opens us up to life around us. It softens us a little bit. We're not as hard, and so I think that's an idea, and I think you're probably projecting that in your class. Don't be so hard on yourself. Expect to be surprised. I mean, that's a great way to. That's almost like life, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because if you don't make mistakes,
and accept what happens. Like,
right. Put a little gouache over it, and
Well, I remember when years ago, when I had a couple of young kids and a mortgage and all that, and galleries breathing down my neck, sweating on work, I'd get stuck on a painting. I'd be in the studio and it just wouldn't be going right, and I'd get frustrated, and I'd fight with this thing for a week sometimes, and it was terrible. I'd be, I'm in bed at night thinking, what's going on with that painting? Why can't I get it to work? And it was like a battle sometimes.
Right.
And after a while, I kind of woke up to it. And as soon as that started to happen, I'd put the painting aside,
Right.
start on something I was comfortable with.
Right.
It may not have been a great painting, but I was happy with it. And then I'd do another one,
Right.
happy with that. And you just get over that sort of hole that you dig yourself into.
Right.
And once that happened, your mental process changes.
Right.
And a week later, I'd pull that painting out that I'd turned around against the wall that was causing me all that grief, look at it, and 9 times out of 10, 5 minutes work on it would straighten it out and everything would be okay. So it wasn't the painting or the way I was working on it, it was the way I was thinking.
Right.
So you've really got to allow yourself to not get bogged down and worried about negative things. It's
Right.
just the way you look at it.
And that's a good way of addressing a bugaboo I have in my life, in that school districts they're pulling away from music and art and going into sports. Not that there's anything wrong with sports, but what you just said identifies that painting and art is a problem-solving kind of thing, that you're using your whole brain. You're using everything to kind of solve that. You got yourself into a position where you couldn't see how to proceed. You lay it aside, you do some things that you can succeed in, and then you come back and go, okay, 5 minutes, I got it figured out.
Yeah.
And that's what people that have businesses like to hire people that can actually think creatively. So art promotes creative thinking. So
That's right.
take art, do art.
Yeah.
I mean, so your impressions about Cheap Joe's in Boone, North Carolina.
Oh, fantastic. A few people have told me in the past, you've got to go to Cheap Joe's. It's fantastic. He's such a nice guy, and he's got this amazing studio. And you sort of think, oh yeah, well, must do something about that sometime. But when Diane had arranged to come here, and we came and we met Joe, and he was such a nice guy, just like everybody said. And the setup here was just fabulous. That huge screen, overhead camera, and big tables for everybody, beautiful lighting. It's really good, really.
Yeah.
And the area is, except for the day where it's sort of cold.
It's cold. It went to 60
outside.
today. Yeah, from 83 last Thursday to 60 this Thursday.
A beautiful area. Joe took us for a drive around the other day. We went out to a little place called Todd.
Yeah, Todd, North Carolina. Right.
Yeah, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Old barns and
a lot of scenery for a lot of inspiration for some paintings. And that's where Joe he paints the country around us. So it's, it's a good thing. So you'll be back in 2021.
That's right. Yes.
So it's always an interesting question at the end. Why would I want to take a John Lovett workshop?
I think I think what I try and get people to do is squeeze more out of what they're doing.
Okay.
A lot of people seem to reach a plateau and they don't know how to. And painting tends to go like that. You work away for a while and then something will happen, you jump up, and then you'll work away, and something else will happen. Well, I want to be the person that makes that jump up. And it seems to happen, you know. Every student, they're all sort of different, but you can see often, you know, where they're heading into problems, and just a few words can sort of get them over that and get them to make that leap up to the next level.
Well, that's a good thing. So, John, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Terry.
You're going to visit a little bit in the United States and then head back to Brisbane, right?
Yep.
So we will see you in 2021, and in a couple of weeks this video will be available for our thousands of YouTubers. And
Terrific.
so, John Lovett, thank you.
Thank you.